Aljoscha was a keynote speaker at our latest ISSID conference in 2025 at the University of Vienna. It was a pleasure to actually host him and to hear the remarkable work which he has been engaged in throughout his career. So, Aljoscha, perhaps you could just introduce yourselves and tell us all a little bit about who you are and what you've been doing to reach this prestigious level of professorship.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I'm very honored to be part of this. Yeah, Aljoscha Neubauer. In German, you say Neubauer. Neubauer would be the English version. I'm professor of differential psychology, differential and personality psychology at the University of Graz since already 30 years. I'm working there, and I was president of the International Society for the Study of Individual Differences, as you mentioned, and I'm interested most. Psychology was how did I get inspired to become a psychologist? That came mainly through a teacher that I had at high school. I learned psychology at high school, and that motivated me to study psychology. And already during my studies of psychology, I was working in a neuropsychology section doing EEG work. And then I came across literature showing that some EEG parameters, so parameters of the electroencephalography, namely the so-called evoked potentials, might correlate with human intelligence. And from that on, I was interested in the field of intelligence, and I thought this is a fascinating idea on possibly how to measure intelligence or the IQ with the use only of neuroscience measures, so to speak, and uninfluenced by educational or social processes, so to speak, so to come to an understanding of the real potential of a person. That was the starting point of my dealing with intelligence research, doing first of all studying relations between mental speed of information processing and intelligence. Later on, I moved on to EEG and also fMRI measurements, so doing brain scanning in relation to intelligence. I worked a lot on the so-called neural efficiency hypothesis of intelligence, the idea that more intelligent brains need less energy while they cope with cognitive demands, and therefore have more reserve capacity when it comes to the really hard tasks, so to speak. Later on, there was some research showing, or the idea on whether possibly this neuroscience approach to intelligence could also be possibly used to increase intelligence. Some neurocognitive scientists even say that this might be the kind of the holy grail of neurocognitive sciences, if you could stimulate from outside the brain to increase the IQ of a person. And that led to some research that I did using so-called transcranial electrical stimulation. The idea that you apply from outside the brain a very small electrical current in a certain rhythm, in a certain oscillation, so-called theta rhythm, that means rhythms between 4 and 7 hertz, and that this makes the brain also oscillate in that theta rhythm, which itself is associated with a higher working memory performance. And that was the idea, so to improve the working memory and thereby intelligence by applying such a current from outside. There is a lot of research on this topic. So far, no one really succeeded to make people really more intelligent by that method. But on the other hand, there is a lot of discussion about all these enhancement and in general the biohacking stuff. So the idea, how can you improve yourself? And I am still interested in the idea on how to improve intelligence, so to speak. And and what can be done about that. But also the question, how this might relate to personality traits. Are there people who are more eager to increase their intelligence by such methods, or other people who might be more anxious to, for example, to apply such transcranial stimulation, and what effects that might have? There are other issues, sociological issues, economic issues. What does this do with the society? What does it do with the world, so to speak? If people can get more intelligent, would they believe less in conspiracy theories and so on? What could be potential benefits of a widespread intelligence increase? But so far, research shows it is not really possible, but we are going on to do research in that direction. The other aspect that I'm interested in, and that's also a little bit related to that, is the question on how good people are at estimating or assessing their own potentials. So there is research and big meta-analysis in the meantime showing that the correlation between self-estimates of abilities, of talents, of gifts are surprisingly low correlated with objective assessments via intelligence tests, or also in other domains like musical expertise, or so the judgment of professionals and so on. So people are not very good at self-estimating their abilities. And that is also different in different domains of intelligence. For example, people are relatively better judging their numerical ability, but for example, in verbal ability, there is quite a low correlation between the self-estimate and the results of objective verbal intelligence tests. And the recent research is that we are doing is mostly interested in some special effects that are discussed in this connection. There's the general effect, the so-called above average effect, that people generally tend to overestimate their abilities. Classical example is male older car drivers think they are better than all other car drivers, but cannot be the case. And specific effects then, like the Dunning-Kruger effect, for example, the overestimation is especially seen in people with lower ability, or in that domain of lower ability. There's a lot of research going on whether this Dunning-Kruger effect really exists. There were methodological discussions about that, and we have shown in some research, yeah, there is a Dunning-Kruger effect, but only in some areas, but not in other areas. Other related effects are the so-called imposter phenomenon. That's the opposite phenomenon of the Dunning-Kruger effect. And then especially also gender as a moderator variable, the so-called male hubris, female humility effect. So the finding that men tend to overestimate their abilities and women tend to underestimate their abilities. And again, that especially in some domains, especially in relation to the STEM domain, this is important also regarding professional choices. Yeah, and I have done a lot of research, also some practical work, counseling work, and I have also written a German book on that. Mach was du kannst, do what you can, or do what you are good at. And my idea is to promote the idea that it is not only good, contrary to common belief, to only follow your interests. Also try to get an assessment of your abilities, of your talents, of your intelligence profile, so to speak, because we know from research that intelligence is correlated more highly with professional success than professional interests. Interests are important, of course, but they are not as important as people often say, who say you often have the lay conception, it is only important what you are interested in. But that's not true. You also have to have a gift, a talent for a certain job. And yeah, and that's my credo, to make that idea popular, so to speak.
What a fabulous answer. And you've clearly been involved in such really interesting research. Was this research that you explored at the recent keynote that you gave at the University of Vienna at the ISSID conference, or did you talk about other things?
Mostly it was an overview of the current state of the cognitive enhancement literature. So the question on how and where does enhancement work? There are many other topics. It's not only about transcranial stimulation. There are pharmacological approaches. The discussion of whether Ritalin or methylphenidate might increase cognitive abilities. In the USA, it is very popular to take methylphenidate as a drug, so to speak, to become to have higher cognitive capacities. But there's also research on more psychological methods like working memory training or even the use of certain computer games. So the idea of gamification, so to make cognitive trainings like computer games. And there is some research showing that some computer games can, in fact, enhance some cognitive abilities. It is known, for example, that the famous game of Tetris can increase spatial abilities. And so this is a very interesting topic. And we are interested in my working group, especially also in the question on how accepted, what is the acceptance of these methods, who would use these methods. Generally, we find that the acceptance is much higher for active methods, so-called active methods. Active methods means you have to work, you have to play computer games, you have to do a working memory training on an app, on your smartphone, for example, or other active methods, as opposed to these passive methods like transcranial stimulation, where you simply sit and you get from outside current, some electricity in your brain, or the pharmacological methods. And the question also why some people seem to profit, whereas others seem not to profit. And that is also interesting topic. We have found that in one of our transcranial stimulation studies, that there are some people who showed an increase of several IQ points, and others even showed a decrease in their IQ from pre to post test after the stimulation. So the reasons why it works with some people and why not, that's also an interesting question that we are dealing with.
Do you foresee a time when we'll all be cyborgs with extra enhancements of our intelligence to maybe keep up with artificial intelligence?
That is the discussion. I'm also interested in philosophy a bit, and this is the discussion going on in the so-called transhumanism philosophy, and connected to that post-humanism philosophy, the idea that we have to, so to speak, enhance ourselves on one hand to keep up with the artificial intelligence, and mostly also to maybe to make the world a better planet to live on, because so far our intelligence has not brought us so far. We have wars, we have pollution, and so on. We have climate crisis. So there are many things that are not running well. And that's the idea of transhumanists. We have to become better humans. Although I'm rather skeptical about whether simply intelligence enhancement might help with this. But there are also discussions about moral enhancement and so on. So this might be also a topic for future psychology, moral enhancement. No?
Absolutely. What advice might you give to people interested in psychology, maybe academics coming into the field who are interested in the study of personality, individual differences, and intelligence?
Yeah, the main thing is, I think we have to see where the field goes. And what my observation also at the conference is that there is a little bit monoculture almost. are sticking with the same topics somehow in the field of personality psychology. There's a lot on dark triad and so on. And to be a little bit critical, I would like to open up the field and look more into other fields, into sociology, into philosophy, to see what connections are to these areas. And there are so many modern world phenomena that I do not see dealt with so far. And one thing is all this enhancement stuff, this biohacking stuff. This is in fact a much bigger field where one could look at to see what really motivates young people in trying to enhance themselves, biohack themselves. There are so many different things going on that it would be interesting to see more research in that.
Aljoscha, it has been an absolutely remarkable opportunity to spend a little bit of time trying to understand your research, your interests, and how you've achieved so much. So what I would like to say is thank you so much for your time, sir. And I really appreciate the words of wisdom that you have told us all. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.